Welcome back to part 2 of my video on the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. In part 1, I talked about the build up to the race and then the race itself. In part 2, I will discuss what came next, which is the reason this race is one of the most controversial races in F1 history. If you missed part 1, click on the I button in the top right hand corner, or check out the description where I'll leave a link so you can see what happened in the race before watching part 2. Enjoy! On the 3rd of August 2009, a week after the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet Jr. confirmed in a statement that he had been dropped by Renault for the rest of the 2009 season with immediate effect, having failed to score a point for Renault all season. However, Piquet had made a statement to the FIA at their headquarters in Paris on the 30th of July, just a few days earlier, which would have a massive effect. In this statement, which was leaked a few weeks later, he revealed that he was asked by Flavio Briatore, team principal of Renault, and Pat Symonds, technical director of Renault, to deliberately crash his car in order to positively influence the performance of the ING Renault F1 team at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. The proposal was made shortly before the race in a meeting in Briatore's office, where Symonds asked Piquet if he would be willing to sacrifice his race for the team by causing a safety car. He mentions how he was in a fragile and emotional state at the time due to not knowing whether his contract would be renewed, and also by the fact he had qualified in 16th place, so he accepted the team proposal, hoping it would improve his position in the team at a critical time in the season. He wasn't told it would guarantee him a new contract, but he believed it would be helpful. Pat Symonds then showed Piquet which corner he should crash at after the meeting. Turn 17 was chosen because, as mentioned earlier, there were no cranes that would be able to take a damaged car off the track. Furthermore, there were no side entrances either, which would allow marshals to quickly move the car from the track. This means a crash at that corner would almost certainly cause a safety car. Symonds also told Piquet the exact lap for him to crash, so that a strategy could be deployed for Alonso to refuel before the safety car, meaning Alonso could start with a light fuel load and overtake heavier cars, who would have difficulty catching up later in the race due to the safety car. He revealed there were no mention of any concerns with respect to the safety of himself, other drivers, or the public. The only comment in that context was from Pat Symonds, who told Piquet to be careful. In terms of the crash itself, Piquet said that he intentionally caused the crash by letting go of control of the car just before turn 17, where he continued accelerating after spinning, when a normal reaction would be to brake as soon as possible. His engineer questioned the nature of the incident as he found it unusual, but Piquet replied that he had lost control of the car. After the race, he told a family friend and advisor Felipe Vargas about the deliberate incident, and then his father Nelson Piquet Sr. sometime later. The controversial plan that Renault went with at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix could be down to a race that happened earlier in the season. As lap 36 of the 2008 German Grand Prix began, Timo Glock lost control of his Toyota, striking the pit wall, causing a safety car. Nelson Piquet Jr. had made a second and final stop 2 laps earlier, with Piquet taking on enough fuel to the end of the race. Due to the safety car rules, no one could venture into the pits. Once they were allowed to come into the pits, Piquet was handed 11 places and went on to lead the race and take a lucky second place. His frustrated teammate Alonso finished out of the points in 11th. Renault ended up using a similar plan to their advantage again at Singapore, but instead they were the ones who deliberately caused one of their cars to crash. It wasn't to be a secret for long, however. Nelson Piquet Sr. told race director Charlie Whiting at the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix about the incident, who then told FIA President Max Mosley.
Charlie Whiting had been Nelson Piquet Sr. Chief mechanic and engineer when he won the World Championship, so they knew each other very well, and Nelson told Charlie the story in great confidence, and Charlie told me. So we knew what had happened, but there was absolutely no proof, no evidence.
Renault then gave Piquet a contract for the 2009 season 3 days after the race in Brazil. Piquet Sr. then told Mosley over lunch at the 2009 Monaco Grand Prix without knowing that Mosley already knew the story.
It was extraordinary because, I mean, he was really, really upset. I mean, he was distraught over lunch. And he said, and I said, well, what we need is a statement from Nelson Jr. He said, he's round the corner, I can bring him in. I said, no. I said, I've got to stay out of this, but I will arrange for people to interview him and so on. I don't want to get involved. And I got a very senior, very recently retired policeman to do the interviewing. The difficulty was that if we then went after them using that evidence, they would have said, well, we've just fired him from the team. I mean, he's just made the whole thing up. And it would have been impossible to convict them.
Mosley was facing a power struggle at the time, thanks to an article by the News of the World about his private life, which brought his presidency into question. FIA began an investigation, but it would be a few months before anything more was brought to light and Piquet's statement would be received. News started to surface on the 30th of August that Nelson Piquet had deliberately crashed during the Singapore Grand Prix, and on the same day, the FIA announced that they were investigating alleged incidents at a previous F1 event, although they did not reveal which race. On the 4th of September, Renault were formally accused of interfering with the outcome of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix and conspiring with Piquet Jr. In a statement, the FIA stated that the charges against Renault included a breach of Article 151C of the International Sporting Code, that the team conspired with its driver, Nelson Piquet Jr., to cause a deliberate crash at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix with the aim of causing the deployment of the safety car to the advantage of its other driver, Fernando Alonso. The team was called to a meeting of the FIA World Motorsport Council in Paris on the 21st of September, just days before the 2009 running of the Singapore Grand Prix. After being charged, Renault stated that they would be making no comments until the hearing. However, on the 10th of September, Piquet Jr. made his second statement to the FIA, and on the same day, a transcript of his first statement was leaked. When questioned over the leak, Max Mosley said, "I haven't seen anything which I believe to be a forgery." Fernando Alonso denied knowing of any plan to ask Piquet to crash, stating, "I cannot imagine these things, these situations. It's something that never entered my mind." The FIA obtained telemetry from Renault from the crash, which showed Piquet had continued to increase the amount of throttle inputted after his car started to spin, instead of starting to brake. Alonso was interviewed during the 2009 Belgian Grand Prix weekend by the FIA, who believed he was telling the truth, that he knew nothing about the plan.
The first person they called in was Alonso. Alonso denied any knowledge of any sort of plot. And interestingly, the senior policeman, who's very experienced at questioning people, is convinced he was telling the truth. So, an expert opinion.
However, Briatore and Simmons would have no such luck.
Of course, Pat is a completely honest person. And Pat said, I can't answer that question, when he was asked directly. And so that was it, really. I mean, now we were confident enough to go after them.
Simmons refused to answer repeated questions over whether he had met with Briatore and Piquet on the day of the race, or knew anything of a plan to orchestrate a crash, but did assert that the plan was first put to him by Piquet the day before the race. The day after Piquet's first statement was leaked, Renault stated its intentions to take legal action against Nelson Piquet Jr. and Sr. for libel and attempted blackmail to allow Piquet to drive for the rest of the 2009 season, although Piquet Jr. responded by saying that because he is telling the truth, he had nothing to fear. On the 14th of September, Pat Simmons was reported to have been offered immunity if he provided the FIA with details about the incident. On the 15th of September, extracts of the Renault radio conversations during the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix were published, where it reveals Flavio Briatore's anger at Nelson Piquet and Piquet asking what lap he was on. Piquet is also told to push as he must get past Barrichello, which was his excuse for the crash, as well as Simmons telling the engineers he has a plan for Alonso. On the 16th of September, 5 days before the World Motorsport Council meeting, Renault made the stunning announcement that they would not contest the charges brought against them and that both Briatore and Simmons had left the team, with the FIA confirming the meeting would still go ahead. This pretty much confirmed that Briatore and Simmons had instructed Piquet to crash. After a 90-minute hearing, the council imposed a suspended disqualification on Renault for 2 years. This meant that if a similar incident occurred before 2011, Renault would be banned from Formula 1. Although the FIA deemed that the offence was worthy of exclusion, it was decided to suspend the ban for 2 seasons because Renault admitted to its guilt and took action against the men involved in the actions. Briatore was banned indefinitely from any FIA-sanctioned event, while Simmons received a 5-year ban. The council came down hard on Briatore because he denied his involvement despite overwhelming evidence. Simmons, in contrast, had confessed, expressing his eternal regret and shame for his role in the scheme. He told the council he should have dismissed the plan immediately and that he did it out of a misguided devotion to the team. A major contribution to the punishment of Briatore and Simmons was the testimony of an unnamed witness X, a Renault employee who was present at a meeting shortly after qualifying when Simmons had mentioned the possibility of the plan to Briatore. Witness X objected to the idea and sought to distance himself from it, and he did not know the plan was to be carried out until the crash happened. It has been reported that Witness X was actually Alan Permain, Renault's chief race engineer. The news got worse for Renault as their title sponsor ING and Mutter Madrilena both ended their sponsorships with Renault less than a week after their decision and before the upcoming 2009 Singapore Grand Prix. It also didn't help as their new driver, Romain Grosjean, who had replaced Nelson Piquet, which started the whole controversy, crashed in practice at the exact same corner and in a similar style to the way that Piquet had crashed a year earlier. However, Fernando Alonso did manage to salvage something for the team as he got Renault's first podium of the season as he finished 3rd in the race. On the 5th of January 2010, both Briatore's and Simmons' bans were overturned by a French tribunal, with both receiving compensation as well. The FIA appealed the decision, and on the 12th of April, the FIA announced a settlement with both Briatore and Simmons, who both agreed not to work in any FIA-sanctioned championship until the end of 2011, and not to work in F1 until 2013, although they could be a consultant to a current F1 team in the meantime. Simmons ended up being a consultant for Virgin Racing in 2011, and in July 2013 he joined Williams as Chief Technical Officer, which he stayed as until December 2016 when he left. However, Briatore never returned to F1. On the 7th of December 2010, it was announced that Nelson Piquet Jr. and Sr. had won a libel case against Renault at the High Court, with Renault apologising to the Piquets and paying them substantial damages. Nelson Piquet Jr. never raced in F1 again, with the controversy surrounding the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, along with his under-par driving, effectively ending his hopes in F1. Some were also critical about the fact he escaped sanction from the FIA despite admitting to race fixing. He has since raced in NASCAR, and he currently drives for Jaguar in Formula E. Despite being cleared of any wrongdoing, some still feel Fernando Alonso must have had some knowledge about the strategy which went on to winning the race. There have been examples since then of Alonso knowing more about strategy than he let on in 2008, and examples of his team sacrificing the other driver to help him. For example, the Fernando is faster than you incident at the 2010 German Grand Prix, or when Ferrari gave Massa a gearbox penalty at the 2012 United States Grand Prix so that Alonso could be starting further up the grid and on the clean side of the grid, which was expected to give a significant advantage. When asked in 2009 if he considered it a legitimate win, he said,
"Yes, I do."
Even though the team effectively manufactured it?
Well, I think that's interpretation. There are many interpretations how you can win the race. That was in very early stage of the race, and it was a long race to do, and the car was performing well. I did no mistakes, and I still counted.
There was also the second safety car, which meant Alonso had to fend off Rosberg when the safety car came back out, but he managed that easily. Just this weekend, a reporter tried to ask him about the 2008 race, but he stopped them and said he would not answer anything about the past, not even last year. Only Alonso may truly know if he had any idea about the plan. This incident was the latest in a long list of controversies that happened in F1 during the mid-2000s, along with the 2005 United States Grand Prix, the 2007 Spygate incident, and the 2009 Liegate incident. As a sports purist who wants to know that the sport they are watching is clean and fair, 2008 Singapore Grand Prix is one of the lowest points in sporting history, with the results of a race clearly fixed to benefit one person. At the time of the race, however, before all the stories came out, I remember thinking the opposite. As a Brit, I was supporting Lewis Hamilton, and I was happy that Hamilton had managed to score 6 points while Massa scored 0. Apart from the fans, Massa and Ferrari were the worst to come out from this. Massa was comfortably leading the race, and without the first safety car, it could be assumed that he would go on to win the race, or finish on the podium at least. However, because of the safety car and the rush to get him and Raikkonen out as quick as possible, it caused him to have an accident in the pit lane and take his race win away, as well as his possible first World Championship. He lost the World Championship by 1 point in the end, and this race can certainly be put down as one of the reasons he did. The pit lane incident could also be one of the reasons that refueling during a race was banned in 2010, which was done to save money, but also could be seen to stop accidents with refueling at pit stops. Massa never went on to be a proper title contender again after 2008, and was lucky to be still driving in F1 after his accident in Hungary in 2009. Watching it back, it does seem too good to be true, with the commentators repeatedly saying how Alonso tried a different strategy to the drivers around him to gamble. Unfortunately, that was the case. It was too good to be true. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Leave in the comments below what you want me to talk about in the next video, whether that is another F1 controversial race or moment, or a moment from a different sport, or another explanatory video like the Nations League video. Also, leave your predictions for this year's Singapore Grand Prix and for the rest of 2018 season below. See you next time.